I really love. So we thought it would be a great region to talk about wine wise. And what makes the wines great in that area is for a whole different set of reasons. A lot of people do know the primary best known wine is the Verdicchio, probably without even realizing that that is a Marche wine. And I think, Cynthia, it's a wine you find pretty easily in the States too, right?
You do. It's interesting because Verdicchio has kind of a checkered past. It is one of the white grapes that are going to become Italy's premium white wines. It's a wonderful grape for many reasons that we'll go into. But in the 20th century, when there was a lot of agriculture and just sort of a lot of quantity and not a lot of quality, particularly in the sort of more agricultural and poorer regions like Marche in those days, Verdicchio was produced. Masses and masses of Verdicchio produced, often in a fish-shaped bottle that was sold outside of Italy very cheaply. It was a big trend for quite a long time. The unfortunate side of that is that while everybody seems to know about Verdicchio, the opinion of Verdicchio outside of Italy is a little sketchy because it wasn't the best quality when it was mass produced in these very attractive fish-shaped bottles, but that's all changed.
Well, tell us about that wine. It's a native grape.
It's a native grape, and when we say native grape, we have to be so careful. I am reminded all the time by my dear colleague Professor Attilio Scienza, who's the leading light of grape science in Italy, that none of these grapes are actually native. They didn't come from Italy. They came from elsewhere. But they came, thousands of years ago, and they have found their best expression in Italy. So we call them our native grapes because this is where their home has become, where they are expressing themselves best. So yes, Verdicchio is part of a good group of grapes. The Trebbiano di Soave, Trebbiano di Lugana, or Turbiana, if you wish. Both are the same name. And Verdicchio, they are all biotypes. When there was a famine and problems at the foot of Lake Garda, a lot of agriculture people hundreds of years ago moved east towards Marche to be near a water source and took their vines with them. And Verdicchio sort of adapted to its location. So we have this lovely family of grapes in Italy that all start with verde as the beginning of their name. So verde being green. And these are white grapes that have this green element to them in whatever way. Vermentino on the west side of Italy, Verdicchio on the east side of Italy. But they share a green character to how they express themselves in wine.
We consider it a native grape now because, as you say, it found its best expression of itself here in Italy. And it's been, is it fair to say, thousands of years it's been in Italy? Or
the Verdicchio that we see now in Marche, hundreds.
Okay, hundreds. But where did it originally come from? I'm going to venture a guess and say Greece.
Yeah, originally Greece. And of course, we know that, where wine grapes actually were born was the Levant and Georgia, Armenia, that area. So it was the Greeks who were the master traders, barters, and sort of the captains of the Mediterranean, and they used their wines as barter, and they would bring vines. It was the Romans. Greeks tended not to make settlements. They went around, they sold things, and they went home. The Romans made settlements as they traveled because often they were waging a war, so they needed to leave people on the ground there for a while. So they would take everything they needed to plant to sustain their troops and the families that would be left there to consolidate whatever military effort they were doing. So where we see these grapes taking root and finding vineyards and things, that's because the Romans made settlements. The Greeks brought the goods. The Romans made the settlements.
So now I know that the Marche region, it has some low-lying sea level areas, a beautiful coastline, actually gorgeous, and then like within an hour you can get up 2,000 meters and be up in the mountains. It's very unique in a certain sense. So these grapes, where are they finding their best home?
So there's two places. You're absolutely right. Marche and Abruzzo, both next door neighbors as they are. You can go hiking in the mountains in the morning and be swimming on the beach in the afternoon. So both lovely, lovely places with their western spine of the Apennines and then their eastern shores on the Adriatic. So with Verdicchio, we're looking at this series of little towns called Castelli di Jesi. And Castelli di Jesi is, just slightly away from the sea, just in the foothills. So it's a series of little towns, each of which has a tiny little castle on these little hills that face out towards the sea on the east and have their back protected by the mountains in the west. So lovely growing area, nice, well drained, sandy soil. They face out to the sea. They're getting sunshine and getting a cool breeze, but they're being protected in the west by the mountains, keeping them safe from very cold, severe weather, very heavy storms. So it's a lovely, lovely growing area.
So the soil is sandy in part. Tell me more about that, how it's actually what it's growing in and
So sandy, loamy, depending on where you are, it's a soil that is allowing drainage, allowing roots to get down below the surface of the general growing area, but to dig down deeper, to get to more nutrients, to get to the water table. So we're looking at a combination of clay, sand, loam, some very interesting soils there. Um, and then we've got this other area where Verdicchio does very well, slightly further inland and higher up in a place called Matelica. So when we talk about Verdicchio from Matelica, we're looking at more acidity. It's higher up, a bit fuller body, a bit higher alcohol, a little more of this mineral, briny, seashelly type of a note to it, with a texture on your tongue, this interesting chalky texture that white wines don't have really anywhere else except Italy. And those wines from Matelica really age very, very well. So again, we're looking at a white wine that will become more and more important in terms of premium wines being produced from Italy. And it's just ironic because no one thought of Verdicchio as a premium wine 50 years ago. Not at all.
just because they weren't paying attention or curating the vine well, I imagine.
Not only that, but technology has really come on. An investment in wine in Italy has come on. So just the ability to buy stainless steel tanks and control the temperature during fermentation is a game changer, huge game changer in the world of white wines, particularly. So suddenly, this interesting grape, we could maintain the really delicate floral notes. Verdicchio has this lovely herbal, almost like fennel fronds and green almonds. It's a very interesting nose when we first open it and smell it and start to take a look at it. And having stainless steel and temperature control allowed our winemakers to keep those delicate notes, which they couldn't do without that technology. So Verdicchio of old was sort of flat, flabby, lemony, appley. And now when we've got a really wonderful Verdicchio, they are this lovely lemon oil, like lemon zest notes, much more astringent, this wonderful green apple. And as I said, I always get this note of fennel or just the fennel fronds, and this lovely, interesting, sophisticated finish on the palate of sort of a green almond, almost almost slightly bitter, but in a really seductive way. So one of the most balanced wines, very complicated. You know, you can sit and talk about it while you're drinking it. Excellent, very